Hi, I'm Mark Olives, and today I wanted to give you just a quick way to diagnose whether you may have a disc injury or a joint injury in your back. Now, this is not meant to be a be-all, end-all and something you can hang your hat on with great accuracy and say, I definitely have this problem. However, I'm going to give you some hallmark signs that are present with both joint dysfunction and disc dysfunction, and that way can help you to rule things out. And then later on, I'm going to give you different videos and tell you little exercises you can do to help with each of those conditions. Because if you tried to do certain exercises or you do the wrong exercise and you've got the wrong condition, you're going to exacerbate the problem and not help yourself out. So the two major conditions that we frequently see in physical therapy are joint dysfunction and disc dysfunction. Now, the disc is the spacer that sits between the bones of your spine. It's got a fluid component to it, and the fact is discs hate bending forward. When you bend forward, you put pressure on the front part of the disc that drives the fluid that's inside the disc to the back part of the disc. That's the weakest part of the disc, the most vulnerable part of the disc, and the only part of the disc that's ever been shown to have a bulge or an injury. So bending forward compresses, shoves fluid back, irritates the disc. Sitting positions. Discs hate sitting. They do not enjoy it because you're in a prolonged flexed position. It stretches that back part of the disc out and again drives the fluid to the back. Disc problems are worst in the morning time. At nighttime, you're laying down, so there's no compression from gravity to push the fluid outside of the disc. So at night, the discs imbibe or they draw in fluid. When that happens, drawing in fluid into the disc is like drawing in fluid to a dry sponge. As the dry sponge absorbs fluid, it expands. So the disc expands. Now there's more volume in the disc. It's also pushing the bones apart. And that disc is a connective tissue. It's holding the bones together. And as I draw that taut, if that tissue is bulged out or irritated or herniated in the back part of that disc, well, it's going to stretch and irritate that tissue. So people that have disc injuries usually do not sleep well. They'll be very restless at night. They can't find a good, comfortable position. That can be the same thing in the daytime. Discs, they like to move around. They like to have that fluid constantly moving and not just stuck in one place. But morning time, when that disc is fully hydrated and you go to move, it's just extra touchy. So when you have morning pain, that's frequently a sign of a disc problem. Discs usually get better as the day goes on. Why? Because as I compress the disc, fluid moves outside of there and I've got more leeway, more room to deal with things, and I'm not stretched so taut. So those are kind of hallmark signs of a disc problem. Joints have a whole different set, usually very different. Now, it's not to say you couldn't have both, and so sometimes there's some complication there, and then there's sometimes that things just confound and don't really fit into the textbook picture of what's supposed to be a disc and what's supposed to be a joint. But in general, joints do not like bending backwards. When you bend backwards, the joints compress. When you bend forward, they all open up. So typically people with joint dysfunction, they like to bend forward, but they do not like to lean backwards. In a standing position or when you're walking, your back is in more of an extended position. So if you don't like to stand erect, you don't like to walk, that seems to cause more problems, that can be a sign that your joint is dysfunctional. Also, joints kind of act opposite of discs in that they get worse usually as the day goes on. So they're getting a little more irritated as things progress. They like to sit. They're happy with sitting. Gives them a rest, opens them up. They do very well. You can still get some pain in the disc, with the joints in the morning time, and that's kind of a function of inflammation. So that one can kind of go both ways. But if in the morning you have pain and you just flat do not like the idea of bending forward at all, I'd lean more toward the side of disc than I would towards joint. Joint, you're going to have just stiffness and maybe pain, but not necessarily be very reluctant to bend forward. So those would be the big distinguishers between joint and disc, and hopefully this helps you to make good decisions as to what your condition might be, and I'll provide you with some exercises that would help both conditions in a future video. Thanks.